that stage, things were pretty candid, and because the owner representatives and the contractor representatives would come to these initial exploratory meetings, and they would be candid about that. The contractors less candid than the owners because their clients had told them to come. And so the contractors would make certain things about a distrust of academics, feeling that academics were maybe not doing anything useful for the industry, and at least for their companies. And so they wound up putting people on committees and were more concerned about having products that would not sit on the shelf but could be useful to their companies. So they were very concerned, and using pretty blunt language, about saying, we don't want to see you doing publications that aren't useful to us. We want you to give us something that's useful. In the initial stage, there was enough skepticism that they said, okay, we'll give it 3 years to see if it's valid. And they asked all companies that joined to not make a decision on staying in for 3 years, even after they joined. Some of them misinterpreted that and sent us 3 years dues initially. But nonetheless, there was this magical 3 years that it didn't take long before them to say that 3 years is no longer significant. The interesting thing was that the people that the companies chose to put on the initial task forces were the rising stars in the companies, and they determined that this was a much better development path for their people than sending them through training schools. So they would candidly say, this is the best development program that our members that our young people can do. And indeed, most of the ones that were on the early task forces wound up being executives in the companies.
The key to implementation is making sure you understand what's being recommended and why, and be part of that. But the member companies or member agencies will look at CII and say, you know, how do I best make improvements? And they see other companies that have implemented research results and had improvements. They reported those through benchmarking or other ways, and they said, boy, I want to be part of that. So they took a look at things. And I think, again, having the members write the executive summaries for the research reports, put the findings in a summary format that was in terms and language that they all understood. They could read those things, but as they did, very often they came to one or two conclusions. One that says, we need to know more about this so we can make an informed decision. Or, let's go ahead and implement it, but what's the best way of going about it? Who else has done this, and what are their results? So they need access to information, they need access to the recommendations, the rationale behind them, the steps forward, the results, and so we need to make sure we get things in the internet so we get ready access to all the information and to the members so they can do those things. As we continue to advance CII to make the information available to the member companies so that they could make these decisions we talked about earlier became paramount. And continuous improvement is one of the hallmarks of CII. They're always looking for how do I make things better, and that's one thing I really like about the organization and the Institute. And I think the use of the internet to make ready access to the information so that people could make, as I said earlier, informed decisions was critical. And this was a way to do that and not only lead the industry, but then find better ways to use the internet to further enhance project management and controls, and just turned out to be a great step forward.
I think CII is a national treasure. And as I learned more about it, took the job, spent time here, I really became enamored by the contribution. I mean, there are a lot of great organizations, but CII is such a unique organization and what it does and how it contributes. And I was very fortunate to have 4 brilliant chairmen working with me, and they had a vision. They were not just business leaders in their own right, in their own companies, but rather, I think, emblematic of their decision to become a chairman, which is quite intensive. I mean, the amount of time a chairman puts in is a lot. I mean, all of them had very, very responsible positions, and yet all of them chose to contribute by being the chairman and helping this great institution called CII contribute. So that made it easy in many respects. They just had a natural inclination that the things we were doing, best practices, and the other procedure we developed should be fostered, and leadership really falls out of that. I mean, again, it doesn't do you any good to have these best practices, to have these procedures that have proven results if you don't follow through. Our industry is a very conservative industry. there's a tendency to do what we've always done. And so even if you have all the data and so forth to prove a best practice, someone's really got to embrace it, because it is a change. It's doing things differently. And you need a John Zachary, you need a Dennis Schroeder, you need a Wayne Burchett, you need a Les to sort of drive that into their industries. And so it was kind of natural. They just naturally took to this as that leader training. And that was another thing we did as well, is just simply invite some of the younger members of the companies. There's a tendency in CII to have your more experienced members be board advisors, to work on the committees, and we really encourage them, bring along some of the young folks. Pick out your emerging leaders, bring them along. So it all just fit together very, very well. They were just naturally attuned to that, given their commitment, given their participation, given their view of how they should help. That public service ethic was just a natural for them.
I think that there's really two key elements of the strategic plan. The first is to continue to be excellent in the delivery of research and its associated activities. So those knowledge core processes of CII, the creation of knowledge through our research, the dissemination of knowledge through our implementation group and through our professional development group, the assessment through our performance assessment group, and the management of that knowledge through knowledge management. All of those associated activities have got to be strong, they've got to be robust, and they've got to be excellent. That's the first element of our strategic plan, is to keep them there. We've worked so hard at that for 30 years to get them there, and then to continue to improve them is something that we just must do. The second element is to look at how we might diversify into different segments, be able to bring the learnings, the excellence from those segments into CII, diversify into other regions of the globe and bring that excellence into CII, and so that we can stay relevant for the future, because the future is not just process industries. The future of the construction industry is global. The future of the construction industry is a bit more diversification, and so remaining strong in our fundamentals, remaining relevant to the way the world and the environment we're building projects in the future is what our strategic plan addresses. When we look at CII activities in countries outside of North America, there is a desire in all of those countries and a knowledge that, I guess I should say, that delivering world-class capital projects is fundamental to their success, both as companies and as a nation. And so they've looked to CII to help them do that. We're doing that in ways today, such as performance assessment labs, where a project in Canada or Brazil can compare itself with world-class performance and see where it might be able to improve its practices and therefore improve its project outcomes. We're seeing where the companies and the countries that are emerging want their individuals or their engineers and their constructors to have the same experience and the same skills and knowledge and abilities that world-class countries have today. And so the desire to have the CII experience in each of those countries as they emerge and as they become world-class in their own right is why they're seeking, I think, help from CII.
Happy 30th anniversary, CII.
Happy anniversary, CII.
Happy anniversary, CII.
Happy anniversary, CII.